Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilou here. I'm in beautiful, sunny Denmark with Pernilla. Hello, Pernilla.
Hi, Lilou.
It's so good. We're right here at actually the border, if we could say, of Sweden in a town called...
Dragør. We are very close to Sweden. We are very close to the bridge to Sweden.
That big bridge, that big, beautiful bridge.
Yes.
You are the wife of Neil Harrit that I spoke with yesterday about 9/11. And speaking with him, I really got how passionate his wife was, about peace activism. And you've been doing this all your life. And again, we'll speak some more about 9/11. I think it's important about your own story in the peace activism, as well as what does it take to stand in truth, and how can we be in relationship to that in our own relationships so that we can feel self-expressed and good about exposing what we believe in, huh? Because this is something you had to kind of fight for.
Yeah. I started as a very young girl. I was only 12 or 13 when there was a big march in Denmark to prevent us having nuclear arms in some area of Denmark, and that was including Greenland. So it was on the Cold War, of course, and we were all the young. It was almost the young school children and all the left-wing people. They were on that side. In the, you remember the sign against nuclear arms. Yeah. And then later, of course, it was the Vietnam War, and it was the whole. I mean, it was everybody. It was love, peace, and understanding, and we wanted another world, and we were all together. I mean, we all agreed, fighting the police in front of the American embassy, and then after that, World Bank demonstrations, and then women's lib came after that. Of course, it's not in the same category, but later again. Now it was the war in. Lately, it was the war in Iraq, of course, where we were. I think we were 50 million people in the streets in Europe. We were 50,000 people in Copenhagen, begging our Prime Minister Anders Fogh Rasmussen not to take Denmark into war, because we didn't believe Saddam Hussein had these mass weapons of mass destruction. And they were actually laughing at us. They were opening their windows. We were standing in front of the building, the Parliament building, and they were laughing at us, making signs. And so of course we went to war, and of course we were right. There were no mass destructions, weapons of mass destruction. But it was that was the beginning of when I thought democracy is.
Are we really in democracy?
Yeah. And later I had a fight with the former foreign minister who said, well, we couldn't know. How could we know? Everybody thought that Saddam Hussein had these weapons. And they say, what about us? We were 50,000 people screaming, saying, no, it's not true. And I remember Harold Pinter, who I think was a fantastic playwright, he wrote an open letter to Tony Blair saying, take a look in the mirror, you are the problem. But we went to war. So that's what's happening to democracy. The media are lying. The media, all of the medias are lying, and the politicians are lying, and it's sort of the democracy is disappearing. And now I'm very fighting for this 9/11 truth, to stop this, to stop all these wars. We can talk about Afghanistan later, but now, I mean, we are not that enormous group. We are not this, I mean, Joan Baez singing, and Bob Dylan and the Beatles. It was a youth movement in my youth, and now people don't care. Maybe you're right, but so what can we do? And it's so appalling. I mean,
Or maybe it can be happening in a different way. I think these new generations also are bringing maybe a new level of understanding. I don't know if it's people that are not aware, because I see it through millions of views of these kind of videos around the world, that people are aware and people are really wanting to wake up. It takes courage. Yeah. But last time it didn't really work out, so we can't exactly do the same, maybe.
No. So maybe
something else is possible. Something else might emerge.
Okay, yes. So it's true what you say. Every other day we are optimistic, and every other day we are pessimistic. Yeah. But definitely the media are closing their eyes and ears and lying. We know that, and is
in Denmark too, because I heard it's more open, or Norway is more open.
You haven't got a mainstream newspaper or television channel who will discuss this. Yeah. And I have personally a mail from the top chief of the Danish radio, who has written to me that they admit that they have never seen any proof of that Bin Laden and Al Qaeda was behind 9/11. But they have broadcasted this message for 10 years based on rumors. And then I think it's absurd that we are trying to implement democracy in other countries, while at the same time our own democracy is
crumbling, slipping away.
Yes.
Even worse than a crumble.
Yeah. Because I know this. I know a lot of journalists personally, and I've tried to say, "Hey, wake up! Look at this," and they say, "Oh no, it's conspiracy theories." And I say, "Well, I can prove it. It's conspiracy theories." And at some stage, every 11th of September, we are standing and giving out flyers in the streets on the day 11th of September. Yeah. And I was giving out these, deception dollars with Bush on. Do you know them? Okay, and giving it to a journalist on the main paper in Copenhagen. And when he saw me, he ran away. He actually ran away.
Could people be conditioned to a certain way to also be fearful of to lose what we have? It's very unsettling. People are afraid to lose everything.
They're afraid to lose their job as journalists. But this is what we're going to lose if we don't stop this. Is much, much more. I mean, we're going to lose our lives. The civilization is at stake.
Yeah, journalists need to do their job. They need to inform people, not disinform.
Yeah, exactly. And now we are the one who are doing their job. And every time you get a new newspaper, it's just rubbish, or something about a football game, or.
So tell us, what is it that you fight or want to see, or that you really see is at the core of this, and that is you really want to put the light on that? What does it come down to that is the most painful for you to see with the knowledge and the information that you have received and seen and read?
The most painful regarding my friends and
everything, or the information that you had, and the lies that you're seeing, or the core of it all from your understanding after years and years of being active.
Well, it's painful. You're really screaming.
You're not being heard.
No, that's it. Yeah. And people are turning their backs to you, and even your friends. We have lost most of our friends and a lot of family relationships, but of course we found some new ones in who are 9/11 truthers. But it's as we're fighting with people. I mean, we're trying to save their children's life, and they say no. And I think the youth riot in the 68. which actually started in Germany, was about the young people asking their parents, why didn't you stop Hitler? You agree?
Yeah, how do you answer that?
And they said, "Oh, we didn't know. And now we can't. They can't claim they don't know because we've screamed it to them. We've sent letters and mails and articles and people won't hear." There's a sentence, Hitler's secretary. Have you seen this? Der Untergang, a German film. Okay, it's about Hitler's last days. It's about Hitler's secretary. She was called Gertrud Junge. And she has written a book. She became very old. She died when she was 91. She wrote a book, and there was an interview with her. And the interviewer kept on saying, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you do something? And she said in German, wir haben ja nichts gewusst. It means we didn't know. We had not known. And she said that. And I say, that's the same now. They can't, they're saying it's a lie, it's a conspiracy theory, and at the same time, they're sitting like the three monkeys, And we say it's our future which is at stake. And then, of course, if I should talk more about relation, it's very saddening that to lose your old friends. I have a very old friend I've known from I was young, and we do not talk about it. We can talk about everything else, but this is not touched. And then there's a lie between us, because she knows that I know, that she knows that I know,
Is it possible a relationship like that? Because it happens in couples too, where one of the partners feel that they are awakening to a certain truth and the other person is not. Do you think relationship is possible when there is such a discordance?
Well, at some stage it will explode, of course. But you can't be in a couple. You can't be have a husband where you don't agree with about this. I've seen a lot of divorces about this.
Because it's a fundamental way of view of life, isn't it?
Yes. I would compare it with the resistance movement during the Second World War, where people were giving out flyers. And I know couples where the man would, make flyers in his basement and the woman wouldn't touch it. And of course they were divorced. And again, another thing which reminds me of the same is that you are afraid of, is there, when you are in a group and you are afraid one person is going to give you away, what's that called? Tell the opposite. I can't remember the word, but when we sit here, we have a party here with all our true friends, and there's one person we're not certain that he's on our side. And this suspicious takes us much energy. And we're talking, do you think he's okay? He took some flyer. Why do you think he's going to, has some friends?
And then it takes a lot of energy. Yeah.
And because everybody are scared. Everybody's scared. But we have one goal, that all this war, all those wars and this, industry, weapon industry should stop. Because then maybe I could talk about the Afghanistan war, where we've lost 42 young men. And why are we there? There have been a long broadcast in the Danish radio about the war and how the soldiers are working and how much USA appreciate our support with them. Yeah, but the only question nobody could ask is, why are we there? In the beginning, we were there to kill Bin Laden. Remember? It was to bomb him out of the Tora Bora mountains, where he had his cottage, which we have never seen. Nobody have ever seen it. And now later, there's been so many reasons. One of them was two last ministers of foreign affairs have said it was to free the women because they were burqa, and to help the young children to go to school. And our Minister of Justice said, oh, now they've got internet. What? I mean, they're sitting on floors. And there was a Danish documentary film about a Danish soldier who had shot their cow, a peasant family. And that was the only animal that they could feed them. So how on earth are you giving freedom and democracy and women's lip to a family when you shoot their cow? Oh, that was a mistake. I mean, why are we there? It's not ever talked about. Of course, we are there because they are building. The Americans are building a long pipeline to lead gas from Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan or somewhere up there down through the Caspic House. Of course, it's that, and everybody can see it. And then we claim that we have to finish our project and the mission and all this rubbish, and everybody knows it's a lie, but you can't talk about it.
How far is it going to go? How long is it going to continue?
Yeah, well, I think until that pipeline is over, it's done. It's not the reason. Before 9/11, the U.S. I don't know what. The chiefs of the U.S. Government had some negotiations with the Taliban about making such a pipeline. And the Taliban said no. And then they were told either you'll be bombed with gold or with bombs. And the Taliban said no. So we are fighting the Taliban because they don't want the Americans to have that oil and pipeline and gas. So that's a real reason.
And for you, the 9/11 was, as your husband say, one of the pivotal moments or a turning point of absurdity and of manipulation and of lies.
Yeah. Yes. Of course, it's a lie.
And all this is linked, of course, to what you just talked about.
Yes. They had to find a way to have you can read it in the document called the New World Order. It's all there. They had to find a way to get the weapon stocks up again. They were down because there were no Cold War anymore. So they had to find a new enemy, and that should be the Muslims. And so they had to produce another war. And number two, of course, they want to control the world and the oil. I mean, that's the other way around. Dick Cheney said in 1991, they who has got the stranglehold about the oil in Iraq has a stranglehold of the world. It's quite a nice picture. So how do you? So how can you make the American public being so angry that they want to give so much tax money to the military? They had to a new Pearl Harbor. They had to make a new Pearl Harbor, of course. It's so obvious. You have to use a lot of energy not to see it. I mean, you have to put your head down to 3 bushes. Bushes, I mean. Behind every bush is a terrorist. That was the sign I saw. That was a very good sign.
What are the signs for you? Can we go over them? Because we spoke a little bit about it with your husband, but the hard evidence?
The hard evidence? Well, of course, the demolition. There was another very, very touching experience I had. We went to the Ground Zero 2 years ago, and there's a little memorial room for 9/11, and with firefighters' helmets and boots and things like that. And then there's a wall where there's a lot of buttons, and then you can hear the firemen, the fire engineers talking in the walkie-talkies. 8 o'clock, 8:30, all the way until a few half a minute before the towers actually collapsed, because they ran up. And the last one says, it's not that hot up here. We can knock that fire down with 2 lines. It's very difficult to hear him. But that's what he says. And then the other one, okay, we'll bring you 2 lines, something like that. Walkie-talkie sound. And that proves that the official story is wrong. Because how on earth should it be so hot so the steel could melt if people could talk? That's just one, but there are millions of evidences that proves that it's not possible. Iron won't melt like that. It's brought down with demolition, and you can see all these puffs all the way, of course.
On the videos, you have zoom in the videos.
But if you had what's it called? A lot of plates on top of each other. What do you call that? A stable of plates? Mm-hmm. No, not a stable.
A
stack of plates. And you suddenly pulled out some and pushed a third one on the top. Would you imagine the rest of it to collapse? Say, but it was so heavy or so hot or what? No, it has exactly the same weight as the next one and the next one and the next one. So if it started, it would stop. If it started to fall down, of course it would stop. And so would Building 7, of course, where there was not a plane. The explanation doesn't fit the physical laws.
Why would this happen? Why would they want such people were in the building, people were in the plane?
Are you sure people in the plane?
I don't know. Your husband said that there was no evidence of that.
No, the plane were changed with some drones, with no pilots.
But were there some people that didn't? Their husband or wife was in there.
In the houses, in the buildings.
Not in the planes.
Yeah, maybe in the original planes, we don't know what happened to them. They were shifted. They were swapped. At some stage, if you take a plane here, if you fly a plane here, and another one just underneath it, the radar can't see which one is the other.
But the people would not have survived anyway.
We don't know what happened to them. No. But no. There's 65 something people who lost their lives. But the plane were certainly not full. The 4 planes were certainly not full that day.
But certainly people at least were in the towers, and there was a lot of people coming to work, and it was in the work week, I remember. Yeah. In the morning, so people died. Is it part of the conspiracy theory that we hear that there's just too many people living on Earth?
No, it's to make a catastrophe.
To bring back to fear?
To blame it on the Muslims.
And create more war.
To create war with the Muslims. It started there.
I don't know.
No, that's not right. But that's not right. But it escalated there. Why? What has Saddam Hussein to do with 9/11? It was so muddy. He trained the Al Qaeda, so he gave them space to be. What? And I mean, what has the Afghanistan people to do with this accident or this catastrophe? The Afghanistan people. There were no Afghanistan people involved. These Al-Qaeda guys were all from Saudi Arabia. So why? Why attack? And you know, maybe Niels talked about that, but the reason we attacked Afghanistan is that it was from Afghanistan the operation was directed from Afghanistan. That Bin Laden was sitting and direct the whole thing from Afghanistan. So that's why we attacked Afghanistan. But Bin Laden was not from Afghanistan, but that was where. So that I mean, if a British person goes to Sweden and fire a bomb into Finland, then it would be the Swedes who were attacked. Do you see the comparison? What has the Afghanistan people done? They just they claim he was there. They claim he had a full operational cottage or cave.
A lot of people, I think, feel that it's so big that then why bother doing something? Because what can I do as this one individual do about it? Yeah. What would you like to say to people that are hearing it, but just they don't feel they can't feel any difference. They can't make any difference.
No, well, that's what I meet all the time. I mean, that's what the Germans said. Oh, what could we do? What could we do with Hitler were there? What could we do? We tried. I don't know. I just say that if we don't stop it, this world won't be livable, admirable. And if we have this new world order, what they want, that they want the USA to be the dominant state, and we're going to be, you know, a few rich people and a lot of slaves, and they have these FEMA camps. Maybe you have heard about that. It will be fascism. We're fighting fascism, to say very short, because it's going to be world fascism or the Western world fascism. That's what we're fighting.
As long as we're not fighting against each other, and that's one of the aspects that we spoke with your husband, is that I said, well, you know, maybe that's part of their plan too, that we fight against each other.
Yeah.
And then less people on the planet.
Yeah. But
I don't think the solution is there. I really feel in my heart, and I think a lot of people are finding in their heart, even if most of us don't deal with that on a daily, day-to-day basis as you are, it is to me, it feels like a lot of people right now are waking up, can feel that something else is needed. We can no longer continue this way. And they will be, and the most important, that we all start to get out of the matrix or the illusion that we're depending on a system, and that we can all function freely and start to liberate ourselves, liberate our potential, and do from the heart what we feel is right. And from that moment, it feels at some point something will emerge as a solution. But from a loving perspective, you know, why fight with the same weapons?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a naive perspective, but at the same time, it's an aware perspective, because it depends where we're coming from. But I don't think the fighting against is going to do it. It's not going to do it.
No. But we are running out of time.
We're running out of time, but at the same time, we can't go into the fear of not having enough time, because fear-based mentality led us to where we are now. So we can no longer think and act from fear place, because then it's being more or less, it's going to be more or less the same.
I don't know what to say about that, actually. Yeah. I think we are in such a hurry, I saw a long interview with a U.S. soldier who said we were right. Of course, he had been in the military for several years, and everything we say are right. And he'd been what's it called, doped in the system in the military hospitals. So he was almost had been in a very awful treatment. But he said it's right, and we are in a very hurry, and something will catch up in the end of 2012. Everybody's talking about 2012 is a kind of turning point, and the Maya, stuff.
I've done many interviews on the Maya calendar.
Okay, yeah, I don't know, but a lot of people say that. And
prophecies predicted that in the ancestral, in many different cultures.
Maybe it's wrong, but I don't know about that. But I've been very interested in the number 11. Yeah. How many things happened on the 11th, and I don't know if you know of Bohemian Grove. Do you know that Bohemian Grove? You know the Bilderberg Group, of course. The Bilderberg, don't you?
Well, no.
No, the Bilderberg is the richest and most influenced people in the world who meet once a year.
Oh, yes, that group of... yes.
Yeah, with the Queen Beatrix, you know. And they've just met. And they're actually the ones who decide whether we're going to war or what we're going to do. And it has just been taking place.
Where?
In USA. Last year it was in Switzerland, and they decide if the euro should crash or we're going to have a new money system and things like that. They're very powerful, and it's very, very secret, and nobody can go in there and interview people. But it's private. They say, so how could can the police support it? And then there's this Bohemian Grove thing. Which is it's somewhere in California, and it's a a little wood, a grove, a little wood where they are taking some what it called occult is it called occult of sacres,
black magic,
black magic, and offerings, and yes, child offerings, and abuse of young children, and it's all the leading people. I'm reading a book about it now. It's all the most powerful people in USA. All the presidents, all the most powerful men have been there, and they kind of make an oath. That they can never, ever speak about it. And
how can we know that is truth? Because there's a lot of information, as we spoke with Niels, about people are saying about so many different things, and then some other there's some things. I mean, that sounds totally surreal to me.
Okay, you can see a picture. There's somebody who's taking a film long way from. With the picture where there are fires. It's almost like Ku Klux Klan, like, dressed up. And there's enormous owl in stone where they are...
But why would they be those people? Maybe it happens, but why would it be these particular people we're talking about, and those people in top power?
Because they're picked out of Howard University and the other university, the most influenced, rich... boys who are chosen to get the top posts as well as president's posts are chosen in a very young age, and come there. And there's an interview with Richard Nixon where he says it's the most disgusting thing he's ever experienced. And John Kerry, he was interviewed about it, and he said, what about Bohemian Grove? And Skulls and Bones. Have you heard about that? Skulls and Bones? It's a secret, he says. But there's something very, very different there, difficult there, or ugly. And they are in charge. I mean, there are some awful things happening. I'm reading a book by a girl, you should see if you can interview her, called Cathy O'Brien, who's been a sex slave for these groups. I mean, they are taking so many awful things place, but that means also that they all have a grab on each other. If you say what you have done, I say what you have done, if you know what I mean. So they can only become presidents, or they can only become, don't know, leader of the World Bank or what it is, if they have a crush. If they have something on you, where they are vulnerable. But you can look it up, Bohemian Grove. You should do that, and you should look up Cathy O'Brien, and you can see an interview with her. It's.
Yeah, I just don't go to that part because it's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, I should say, or it's not really the topic I would look at every day. And I think it's, but I've heard of it, or information is going around. But I just want to make sure, and my biggest wish is that we all feel empowered, in the end, and not fearful of what's going on. I just really have a strong feeling about that, and I just want people to find their own power, but the real power.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm doing all those interviews and traveling around the world to expose some people's opinion and truth, and then people then can make their own. But at least it's exposed, and then people can choose instead of not wanting to talk about it at all. Yeah. Even if it can be uncomfortable, you know. We can all understand that. It can be uncomfortable to hear some aspect, but I believe that then the people are intelligent enough to listen to their heart and feel what's right, and dig deeper if they want to, or they're called to do that. Yeah. So thank you for this this conversation, and taking the time and having the courage to do what you're doing and digging.
Thank you for having me on the show. I hope I'm not being too frightening, but I agree what you say.
I want to finish on a positive note.
Yeah, I think there's a hope. There's a hope for a better world, and that's what we're fighting for. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I send you much, much love from Denmark. Those Danes are digging it. Yes. Much love. Bye.